I'm heading to the northern end of Ningaloo Reef, about 9 nautical miles from the most northern part of the Northwest Cape, Western Australia. This is gaining a well-deserved reputation as a quality tourism destination and a conservation icon. The Ningaloo Reef occurs further south than most tropical reefs would. Here at the Muiron Islands is the most diverse range of marine life on the entire western coast. I couldn't wait to slap on a tank and get amongst the wet wildlife.
Here we go, diving at the Muiron Islands.
Situated between deep water on the western side of the islands and Exmouth Gulf on the eastern side, the surrounding waters are teeming with marine life, including whale sharks, turtles and manta rays. The Muirons is where the influence of the tropics start to kick in, and a lot of it is available to the wreck diver, both snorkel and scuba in fairly shallow water. Hundreds of tiny fish swarm around every piece of coral, creating a separate little world on each bommy. I was swimming along a reef wall when I came to a coral plateau. Here I met a friendly potato cod. We got along just fine, and he swam me along the reef. We even had a game of tag. As I further explore Western Australia's wonderful coastline, I'm taken to remote coral caves and discover a sea eagle's dinner table. I'll discover the beauty and toughness of nature on the Montebello Islands and the best mud crabs in town. I get to dive the Rowley Shoals and make more friends in paradise. Then it's back on land, if you can call this land, and another paradise where time has stood still.
Another annual visitor to the Ningaloo Reef is the humpback whale. And we have one right in front of us.
The Exmouth Gulf is a breeding ground for the humpback whales. Similar to Hervey Bay on Australia's eastern coast, mother whales can use the protection of the Gulf for their calves. It's also common to see these beautiful mammals anywhere along Ningaloo Reef, and some even venture further north, right up to the Kimberley in the far north of Western Australia. This particular humpback is an unusual half albino. Most of our humpbacks in Australia have a little more white on them than their northern hemisphere relatives. But this guy has more white than he has black, and that's quite rare. The Muiron Islands are only 2 of the islands in the area of Exmouth Gulf. We set sail on the luxury dive vessel True North on a stunning full moonlit night to continue our adventure. There's something about a full moon and a calm ocean that seems to soothe the soul and make dreams of paradise come true.
There's nothing more beautiful than a full moon.
We were headed for more of those small islands that burst with bird life in untouched seclusion.
Just north of the Ningaloo Reef is an archipelago of small coral caves like this one. These coral caves are prime nesting sites for many species of seabirds. Peak Island, which is where I am right now, has roseate and crested terns in thousands.
But where there's such an abundant food source, there's usually a predator laying claim to the bounty. This nest I found proves my theory. White-bellied sea eagles build a large stick nest which is used for many seasons. The nest can be located in a tree up to 30 metres above the ground, or like this one, may also be placed on the ground or on rocks when there are no suitable trees. You don't have to be a CSI to determine that the white-bellied sea eagle feeds mainly on aquatic animals such as fish, turtles and sea snakes. But it also takes birds and mammals. It's a skilled hunter, and his handiwork is obvious. They will attack prey up to the size of a swan. In a clever survival technique, they force smaller birds to drop the food that they're carrying. Why search for dinner when you can steal it from someone else's trolley? With a wingspan of nearly 2 metres, the white-bellied sea eagle is our second largest bird of prey in Australia, behind his cousin, the wedge-tailed eagle. In flight, the black flight feathers on the wings are easily seen when the bird is viewed from below. And that's the problem with birds, isn't it? That view from below.
Hazards of the job.
I carry on undeterred, needing to put more sea miles under the keel. Next up, the resilient Montebello Islands, where not even nuclear bomb tests could spoil the beauty.
We're just arriving at the Montebello Islands, and it was here at the Montebello Islands in the 1950s that they actually tested the atomic bomb.
The Montebello Islands are a group of more than 100 islands off the Western Australian northwest coast. They achieved international notoriety in 1952 when the British and Australian governments cooperated in the aptly named Operation Hurricane and detonated a 25-kiloton atomic weapon in a bay off one of the major islands, Tremuli. The nuclear survey teams moved into the contaminated zone to recover measuring devices and recorded heavy contamination to the north of the blast zone, where most of the fallout was occurring. Unknown to the test personnel, the southerly Lewin current would wash the fallout back toward the Western Australian coast. The surprising thing is, although there would have been a devastating initial impact on the sea and wildlife here, nature has remarkable resilience. After 50-odd years, the area remains beautiful and bountiful. Humans from the test fared less well. These islands were named by the French navigator Nicolas Baudin in 1801. Baudin was discouraged by the barrenness of this country, the lack of fresh water, and the hostility of the Australian Aboriginals. He kept to the sea and did little else than survey the coastline and islands. He named the islands after the Battle of Montebello in 1800. Friend, skipper and dive master Greg Lestier brought me up to the derelict nuclear observation tower. This was built to observe the blast and effects of the bomb, and thankfully, this kind of widespread and ill-considered nuclear testing is practically a thing of the past.
We just hiked up to the observation building where they would have watched the atomic tests. You can see why they chose this spot. It's got fantastic views across the islands.
Enough of the dark past. It was time to further explore the beauty this region had to offer. We decided to scan the rest of the low-lying islands by dinghy. With the odd shark for company, we had the islands all to ourselves. The flat limestone islands range in size from Hermite, the largest, at about 1,000 hectares, to several small islets and rocks of less than 1 hectare. They're the remnants of an old coastal landform and have been separated from the mainland for more than 8,000 years. Greg suggested it was time to hit the sandflats to do a spot of mudcrabbing. So we headed to a secret spot where the big mud crabs live.
Here he comes. Whoa, he's a big one.
From a novice mud crabber, you have to watch your toes.
There's one right at Dave's feet. Dave, don't move, all right?
Don't move an inch, Dave. You'll be in deep trouble.
Just when you think you have one in the net, he slips away.
Pull the net. That's it. You got him.
Oh, don't!
But determination overrules my concern for foot digits. What a great day mud crabbing. Pretty easy when you know how. Caught heaps. These flats are also home to many other species of marine life. We had specifically gone mud crabbing at low tide. There is good reason to watch your tides here.
It's fun to walk around the mud flats here at low tide. There's a lot of sea life that waits for the tide to come in to move up into the mangroves and feed. We've seen a couple of little sharks, a couple of rays, of course a few muddies, but you got to be careful because the tide does come in pretty quick.
These mangroves act as a nursery for marine species like rays, sharks and many species of fish. As the tide moves in, these sandbanks become shallow banks of life. I keep seeing the shadow of stingrays.
There's one right there in the shallows, right at the mangroves where I just was. Just minutes ago, all these roots were out of the water. Now look at it.
Whoa, gotta be careful when the water gets dark like this. I nearly trod on him. He had his barb up. They're not aggressive at all. The barb is only used in self-defense, but it can leave a pretty nasty wound if it gets into your foot.
When the tide comes in, you learn to do the Stingray shuffle. And really, when you do the Stingray shuffle, you try and make as much noise as possible. It goes like this. Saves your feet.
I then realised that fast tide was beating me. Even as I walked back to my dinghy, my Stingray shuffle became the drowning hop. Next on Roar of the Wild, the Rowley Shoals and diving and surfing and fishing and scuba diving. The next day we'd planned a spectacular night dive. True north anchored on the Rowley Shoals, over 250 kilometres west of Broome. There's a chain of spectacular coral atolls on the edge of one of the widest continental shelves in the world.
You couldn't ask for a better night for a night dive. As the sun set, a beautiful full moon rose. And when the waters go black, the ocean goes through a transformation. While many animals go to sleep, we're going to go and take a look at the animals that come out for the night shift.
Because the only source of light is what you bring along, it focuses your attention on individual animals. At night, the colours underwater seem even more vibrant. You'll also see many species that you never see during the day, as they are usually hiding among the corals. Some of the daytime critters are also sleeping. The three pear-shaped atolls of Rowley Shoals have shallow lagoons inhabited by corals and abundant marine life. Arguably, the world's more pristine, untouched coral garden. Each atoll covers an area of around 80 to 90 square kilometres.
It's beautiful in there. It's so clean, so clear. Parrotfish swimming in the gully. It's just beautiful. I'm going back. See ya.
The shoals rise with nearly vertical sides from very deep water. Mermaid Reef, the most northerly, rises from about 440 metres, Clerk from about 390 metres, and Imperious from 230 metres.
It's hard to believe we're over 250 kilometres offshore. The sand cay here at Imperious seems to come out of nowhere, and on days like this, so still and beautiful, there's no place I'd rather be.
Lying on the very edge of Australia's continental shelf, they're regarded as the most perfect examples of shelf atolls in Australian waters. This means there's lots of spectacular wall dives, and the marine life is prolific.
Clerk Reef is part of the Rowley Shoals, and we have come here to find the rare red-tailed tropic bird. This bird only nests in 2 places in Western Australia, and this remote cay is one of them.
These coral cays are an oasis in the middle of a vast ocean. During long days at sea, they're a welcome home for these seabirds. Only a handful of these birds nest here, and the young chicks, although small and vulnerable, are often left to fend for themselves while the adults hunt for small fish and squid.
Here's one here. Beautiful, aren't they? With their exquisite long red tail.
They're beautiful looking birds, readily identified by that long, thin red tail. Like other species of tropic bird, the red-tailed is a pelagic bird. It lives in an open ocean, and normally they only come ashore to breed. They breed annually in the southern summer months, laying just one egg.
It's great that you can get this close to these beautiful birds. They don't have any predators out here, but they do have to contend with the harsh weather conditions. At least these man-made houses offer them a little bit of protection from the blazing sun.
18th century European voyagers found that the tail feathers were prized within the Polynesian societies and worn by high-ranking men. Today these birds are rare and protected in Australia. With such deep water off the reef, it's not uncommon to see dolphins, whales, and even jumping billfish. At the sight of whales, it was time for us to snorkel in the deep blue water.
I reckon they head that way.
No, they keep turning, that's the only reason.
I was quick into the water, but not quite quick enough for the pilot whales. Those guys can move and turn quite quickly. But we did come across a beautiful manta ray. And also a couple of sharky friends.
It is so blue.
Size critter that, wasn't it?
We didn't see any pilot whales, but we did see the oceanic whitetip, which is definitely the one shark in the ocean that I think I should avoid.
Between swims, there is always something to do, and I love surfing 250 kilometres offshore. And although I'm not a big fan of sport fishing, it never hurts to catch your own dinner. Now this is what I call very fresh sushi. But finally, the reason we have travelled so far out to sea, scuba diving. The outside walls of the shoals are alive with soft corals in every imaginable colour. That means that diving is a must, and there is no way you could keep me from disappearing into the blue. Over 230 species of coral and 685 species of fish inhabit the shoals, including many species not found on inshore coral reefs. There are even a number of species found nowhere else. The fish are so happy here, they dance. Well, it's either that or it's fighting, or love. This is what I came for, the real thing, bright and alive and all around me. Giant potato cod like this bloke wait to be hand-fed. But when you choose to hand-feed them, keep a watchful eye, because only a fool ignores a hungry fish. I should know, I'm one of the fools that learnt the hard way. But I got particularly friendly with this cod, very close and personal. Potato cod can be very disarming, and I can spend a lot of time filming them, sitting with them, and swimming next to them. Some people think I have gills because I feel I could stay here all day. Just as well reality kicks in, it's time to head for the surface. But the cod was not the only one I picked up down there. Someone else had hitched a ride.
I've picked up a date. Some sucker's on my leg and he won't let go. Can you see him? Hanging around my ankles now. Oh, he's sucking.
True North motors thunder into life. So next up I'll be in Broome and facing anything but clear blue water. It was time to get off the boat and hit the road, and we're on our way south to Broome to Eco Beach.
This is a blue tongue. This little guy's been sunbaking on the road, but I think it's kind of sort of a dangerous pastime, so I'm going to put him off on the bush there. Look at his tongue. No wonder they're called the blue tongue. It's all right, buddy, I'm not going to hurt you. Look, see? That's why I got you off the road, see?
There is one thing about northern WA. It can be very hot, but it can also be very wet. The wet season was upon us, but the good news is, with it comes the bird life. They just love flooded plains.
You're on gate duty, Dukes of Hazzard.
Dave, the cameraman, gets the gate and exits the only way he can from his classy bush basher. The plentiful rains also meant that the road into Eco Beach was flooded. It's all part of the adventure. Time to abandon the car.
The road's closed, so we've got to call Carl.
Hope all this water hasn't wrecked the radio.
Okay. Radio handset, press button. Hello, Eco Beach, do you copy?
Hi, Lynn, is that button down there?
Yes, this is Lynn.
Sending someone down to pick you up now, Lynn.
Fantastic, thank you very much. I see what you mean about a little puddle.
Before long, the perfect vehicle for these conditions arrives to limo us to our resort. As the waters continued to rise around us, I began to wonder, but hey, we were in local hands now. Before long, paradise once again revealed itself to us.
With a couple of days to spare, I couldn't think of anywhere better to come than Eco Beach, which is 160 kilometres south of Broome. The best thing about this place is the peace and quiet. It has miles and miles of golden beaches and bushland, and lots of wildlife.
I love living among nature, and here it was all around us. It makes me wonder why we live in such a bland society, continually pushing nature away from us. It wasn't long before we were picked up hitching by a friendly local and shown the sights.
This place is called the Mini Bungles because of the rock formations. There's only one way that rocks ever look like this, and that's through millions of years of erosion.
The mini bungles are an example of ancient landforms produced by uplift and erosion over millions of years. Even before that time, however, the rocks had been subject to deep weathering, typical of tropical climates, which weakens the sandstone. Even more stunning is when these rocks reflect the afternoon sun.
Can't complain about this view, can you?
In a place called Eco Beach, there's no such thing as hiring a quad bike, so it's 1 horsepower, and I like it that way. This place is an ancient land, one where I imagine the Aborigines standing on these ledges looking out to sea. Perhaps their ancestors still keep a watch over this place. Western Australia still has many wild places. The beauty of Ningaloo Reef, the Montebello Islands, clear waters of the Rowley Shoals, to Eco Beach far away in time. I have enjoyed them all, and you can bet I will be back. I wonder if I walk far enough, will I reach the sun before it sets?